Hi, this is Michael Buffer, and welcome to the BoxHard Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Mikey Garcia.
Yo, it's your boy, the odd guy himself, Malik King Scott.
Hi, I'm Charlie Edwards.
This is Fast Eddie Chambers, and you're listening to the BoxHard Podcast with my main man, Joey Coastman.
Hello everybody and welcome to episode 180 of the BoxHard Podcast. I'm your host Joey Coastman. I'm joined as always by the infamous Mr. Ayaz Sumra. Ayaz, how you doing?
I'm good, Joe. Yourself?
Very good, my friend, very good. Right, let's dive straight into the review part of the show. We're going to try to whiz through things as quick as possible. We're going to actually start with a card that took place last Thursday. We will be speaking to the man involved in the fight later on in the show. It was at the Avalon in Hollywood, California, USA. Ferdinand Kerobyan, 11-0, the hometown favourite, if you like, undefeated. This one was for the vacant NABF Junior Welterweight title. He took on friend of the show Blair Cobbs, 9-0 with one draw. Kerobyan was the favourite, and he actually lost unanimously over 8 rounds to friend of the show Blair Cobbs. We will be speaking to him later on, but that needs a mention. Moving out now to Chile at the Gran Arena in Monticello in San Francisco de Mostazal. Over here we got to see Miguel Gonzalez, a man who had a record of 29-1. He was in search of win number 30. The one loss actually came to Paul Butler on points. He took on Andrew Maloney, one of the Maloney twins, probably the better of the two, and Maloney actually stopped Gonzalez in Chile, so he had to go on the road for that one, and it seems like Andrew Maloney is the better of the two twins, him and Jason, and he seems to be a real contender in that division there. Also, it was for it was a WBA eliminator, not a final eliminator, so he'll be closing in. Andrew Maloney, real good fighter. Moving out now though to the Centro de Espectáculos del Recinto Ferial in Metepec, Mexico. A real shocker over here. Julio Cesar Martinez Aguilar, 13-1. Again, we said it on last week's show. The one loss was on his debut, a split decision over 4 rounds. You cannot read into that. He avenged it and went on a real knockout streak. He took on our very own Andrew Selby, and I tell you what, the knockout streak continued. Shocking scenes when he KO'd Andrew Selby with a body shot in the 5th round. Absolutely shocking. He also had a point deducted, but my actual view on the fight, in the first round, you know, it was a good start for Andrew Selby. He definitely won the round. He was switching stance. He spent most of the time probably in southpaw, and his best punches were the southpaw jab with that right hand. He also set a very fast pace. It was a good start. The Mexican commentator also gave that round to Selby. The second round, aside from Selby falling short 2 or 3 times and getting hit, he had a near perfect round, to be honest. He landed some bombs on Martinez's chin, and he was schooling Martinez at that point. 2-0 to Selby there after 2. Going into the third, there was a head clash that actually caused a cut on Selby's eye. It was his left eye. The referee harshly took a point off the Mexican fighter. I felt that was quite surprising once again. I mean, referee taking a point off from an accidental, it would seem, head clash. So I felt that was a bit harsh, but it was what it was. As the round ended, the blood had really trickled down Selby's face, and like I say, Martinez did have some success. It was probably his best round in that third, but it was definitely a Selby round, obviously, with the point deduction as well, a 10-8 round. Somehow the Mexican commentator scored that third round a 10-10. Even with the point deduction. I can't understand how that's mathematically possible. Going into the 4th round, it was a bit of a closer round. Selby still won it, but the Mexicans seemed to be warming into it. Once again, that dodgy 10-10 round that the Mexican commentary team had it, other than that, Selby had won every round, so there was a drawn round and he won every round going into this 5th and final round, so he didn't lose a round. And then in that 5th round he was winning the round once again, and he got caught with a left hook to the body, and he took a knee and he stayed down for the count. I mean, he could not breathe. It was just shocking how the Mexican turned it around with just one punch. I was absolutely gutted. Like I say, we will now not see that Charlie Edwards Andrew Selby fight, and I really believe that this is a dream scenario pretty much for any flyweight in Britain that didn't want to fight Andrew Selby. I'm not saying Charlie Edwards doesn't want to fight him, but if I was Eddie Hearn, I'd think, do you know what? There's big fights that we can make in-house. You know, if Charlie moves up, he can take on Cao Yafai. There's unifications that can be made. Why fight Andrew Selby unless you absolutely have to? But then again, I could be wrong. I just don't think Andrew Selby's commercially the best fighter. And for that reason, I don't think it's a massive money fight, despite the hardcore fans like myself and Ayaz, we'd love to see that fight. I'm sure many people listening to me now would love to see that fight, but it seems like now there's an excuse to not make that fight happen. And, you know, he's in a tough position now, Andrew Selby. Gutted for him, absolutely gutted for him. He couldn't breathe. I spoke to him just briefly a couple of hours after the fight. Moving out now from Mexico to Poland. One fight happened at the Hala Sportowa over here. Krzysztof Włodarczyk, or Włodarczyk, I think it's said. 57 wins now. He's got 4 losses and 1 draw. Unanimous decision over 10 rounds against Alexandru Jur, who's now 18-3. That was expected. Moving over now to Russia at the Sport Palace. We got to see Fedor Chudanov pick up win number 19. He does have those 2 losses. His opponent Wuzhati Nualang, 11-3 now, actually retired on his store after 5 rounds with an injury. Moving out now to the Leicester Arena in Leicester, United Kingdom. Quite a shocking few fights on this bill. Let's start with Willie Hutchinson. He moved to 7-0. He knocked out in the 4th and final round Daniel Borisov, who's now 7-25 with 2 draws. Borisov was down twice in the 3rd round and once in the 4th. He also had a point deducted for holding, so a good win there for friend of the show, Willie Hutchinson. Tommy Fury, the brother of Tyson, he actually got a knockout win in the 1st round against journeyman Callum Hyde, who's got a record of 0-27 now with 2 draws. But Hyde does know how to survive, and to get a knockout there against a guy with that experience, you know, the experience difference from Tommy Fury having his 2nd fight and Callum Hyde having his 27th, I believe it was. No, sorry, 29th it was. There's a real depth there in experience, and for him to get it in the 1st round with his lack of experience, that's quite a statement there for me. Hyde was actually down twice from body shots in that 1st. Leon Woodstock picked up a win. He couldn't get his man out of there, Sergio Gonzalez, who's now 10-14 with 5 draws. He was down late in the 8th and final round, but it ended up going to points. So Leon Woodstock 12-1. That one lost to Archie Sharp, friend of the show. CJ Challenger took on Carl Hayward, a man that had to quit his day job in order to, you know, try and prepare best he could for CJ Challenger. Well, it wasn't quite good enough. It was for the vacant Midlands area super welterweight title. Challenger was actually cut above his left eye in the very 1st round, but he managed to win on points over 10. Also, Nathan Gorman moved to 16-0, a points win over 10 against Kevin Johnson. I can't say I've watched it. I was at the Charlie Edwards card. Kevin, the Kingpin Johnson, picks up another loss now, 34-13 with 1 draw. Gorman, it was his chance to get that knockout and impress and say, hey, I did that to Kevin Kingpin Johnson. Daniel Dubois, you couldn't do it. You went to points, just like Daniel Dubois pretty much did when he knocked out Kajanu, but Nathan Gorman had to go the distance with him. But it wasn't to be for Nathan Gorman, but, you know, they are valuable rounds, and it's a big step up for him. Also on the bill, Sam Maxwell. This is a shocker. I was saying on last week's show I'd like to see him stepped up. You know, he had a good amateur career. He took on the likes of Lomachenko, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, he got in there with Sabri Sadiri, who, by the way, was a last-minute replacement. So let's just give Sam Maxwell a little bit of credit here. He was undefeated, so not very often do we see a last-minute replacement jump into a fight like that, and he's undefeated. But anyway, Maxwell had an absolutely nightmare start. He was down in the 1st round and the 2nd round. It was for the vacant WBO European Super Lightweight title, and Sadiri was actually taking him for a mug, really. He was showboating and pretending he was hurt and stuff like that. But anyway, he did get caught with a massive shot in the dying seconds. I think it was about 14 or 15 seconds to go in the final round, the 10th round, and then he got put down, and I think he got quite a long count, but he did get back up to his feet, and he was so wobbly that the referee had to wave it off. But should that have gone the distance, I think he would have won on points. It was a bad performance really from Sam Maxwell, but he had to show heart and he had to show grit, and he did get through it. Thankfully for him, he remains undefeated somehow, 11-0. He's answered some serious questions there. Him and O'Hara Davies, that'd be a fight I'd sign up for. Sam Bowen moved to 15-0. He took on Jordan McCorry. Once again, I've got to say I didn't get enough time to watch this fight. Jordan McCorry, he's now 17-5 with one draw. I thought that Bowen would probably beat him on points or stop him. He managed to stop him in 9 rounds, but he did get hit a lot from what I've heard. It was another defence of Bowen's British super featherweight title. McCorry also had 2 points deducted, so I'm guessing if it went to points, he would have lost a landslide. Moving out now, though, to the Copper Box Arena. Like I say, I was there for this one in London, United Kingdom. I'm going to start here with Shannon Courtenay, or Courtenay, it could be said. I'm not quite sure. It was her debut. She took on a girl called Christina Busuik, who a lot of people were, mocking and stuff like that on social media. She was 0-0 with one draw going in, and I think her draw came to a girl who was undefeated, so you can't really read into it. Was she good? Was she bad? She was certainly tough. Shannon Courtenay pretty much won every round. She really tried to get on the gas and try and get the stoppage, but she was unable to do that. But once again, she banks the rounds. It was a 4-rounder, 4 2-minute rounds. Courtenay looked good, and as I was watching her, I thought, you know what? There's something David Hay about her, and I'm not just talking about the hair. And I didn't want to be the first one to tweet it, but I've seen a few people have said that to her now, so I had to just comment underneath and say, do you know what, I was thinking the same thing, but I didn't want to actually come out and tweet that because I felt like people would probably start laughing. But yeah, very much another exciting addition to the female side of the sport is what we need, so I welcome that completely. Sean McGoldrick picked up win number 8, a points win over 6 rounds against Sean Cairns, who's now 3-2. Jason Quigley moved to 16-0, a knockout in the second round against Matthias Eklund, who's now 10-2 with 2 draws. Lewis Ritson moved to 18-1, a very, very close fight, though it didn't reflect it in the scorecards, appalling scorecards. They had him very, very wide. It was for the vacant WBA Intercontinental Super Lightweight title. Lewis Ritson now, like I say, 18-1. It was his first fight back since losing to Patera. It wasn't so impressive, to be honest. It's almost as if he's found his level. He was rushed into that Patera fight, the after-timers say, and I think it's hard to kind of gauge what he should have done. I mean, he flew through domestic scene, and he needed to be pushed on. So what do? Do you have a fight between, legit European level and British level, somewhere in between, before you move on to even bigger things? Well, to be honest, he went for the proper belt at European level. I don't want to get too confusing here. And he took on Patera, a man who many people would say is probably not legit the best kind of fighter in Europe at lightweight. But he struggled against Patera, so who do you give him to next? He's moved up in weight, not quite sure it's the right thing to do, but he took on a tough Argentinian here, and it went the distance, and he won, like I say, on points. Getting on to the prediction fights now. Lawrence Okoli managed to TKO Wadi Camacho in 4 rounds. Wadi Camacho now 21-8, Lawrence Okoli 12-0. It was for the British Cruiserweight title. That was Okoli's belt, and Camacho brought the Commonwealth. It's now a belt that belongs to Okoli. Camacho was down in that 4th round. Just to quickly whiz through it, I felt like Camacho in the first couple of rounds was too patient. He was fainting with his shots. He wasn't really actually trying to connect with a lot of them. He was letting rounds slip away, it would seem, and Okoli was actually rocked to his boots with a left hand from Camacho in the 3rd round. I'm not quite sure that the commentary team picked up on it too much. Again, I saw it live, and I haven't really heard people talking about it. He seriously did get rocked. I saw it with my own eyes. Camacho, again, hesitated to jump on him. When he caught him with that shot and it rocked him to his boots, he acted surprised. And then, of course, Okoli held him, and Okoli started covering up and stuff like you should do. And then he got warned for rabbit punching, I believe, in that 3rd round. But yeah, In the fourth round, like I say, Camacho got punched down kind of thing. It was like a few clean shots and then he just went down. He stayed down to the count of 9, which sometimes is an indicator that you really needed each second. I mean, sometimes if you pop back up quick, it's a sign of bravado, but sometimes it can bite you in the backside if your head isn't clear. But when you stay down till 9, you're giving off bad signals. And he got back up and literally the first punch he got hit with, I think it was the straight right hand. It was certainly the first punch that Okolie threw with authority, and it staggered Camacho back badly, and the referee jumped in. It was a fair stoppage. He was about to get savagely knocked out, it would appear, and he's also bettered Chamberlain's win over Camacho. Obviously, Chamberlain, when he took on Waddy Camacho at York Hall, it's one of the best fights I've ever seen. Such a complete disappointment that it wasn't televised on Sky Sports, but I think there's some footage of it somewhere on YouTube. It was a fantastic fight, but like I say, it wasn't a blowout like this was, so Okolie did well here to better that win from Chamberlain over Camacho. Moving up the card once again, Josh Buatsi 9-0, now 10-0, a win here against Liam Conroy, who's now 16-4 with 1 draw. It was for the vacant British light heavyweight title, the belt that had been vacated by Callum Johnson. Conroy was down twice in that third and final round. He looked the goods, to be completely honest. Josh Buatsi, I said it on last week's show that if Buatsi gets the knockout, then perhaps he is the real deal. The second round was where Buatsi started hitting Conroy very often. Buatsi showed his class. The first opponent really that we actually know is quite a solid domestic level fighter. The only kind of opponent he took on who'd been proven, if you like. Again, you can't really read into that Avalanche win because, he beat Avalanche in a round and you just didn't know if he'd perhaps been caught cold. We don't really know how good Avalanche is. And the win over Quinlan, I think he hit him when the referee called break or something like that. So I had a few question marks, and I think that, he answered those. Like I say, in that third round, 2 knockdowns. The first one came by a combination that Conroy dipped low from, and he again kind of got punched down. And when he got back up, like I say, the pair exchanged, and Buatsi caught Conroy with a massive straight right. Conroy fell face down. He did get back up, and credit to him for that, but the referee had seen enough at that point. A good win there for Buatsi, 10-0. Like I say, the new British light heavyweight champion. Some big fights domestically can be made there. And topping the bill, Charlie Edwards, now 15-1, a win here against Angel Moreno, who's now 19-3 with 2 draws. It was for the WBC World Flyweight title. Moreno was actually given a count in round 8. I'm going to try to whiz through this. It was a real dominating performance by Edwards, by the way. Throughout the whole fight, but even the first round we saw some lovely uppercuts from Edwards, some nice movement, some great punch evasiveness. Moreno had that hands down kind of style. I wasn't too sure it was going to work well for him. He did get hit a lot. He did manage to hold the center of the ring throughout most of the fight. In the second round, the right uppercut from Edwards was being brought into play very, very often. He also demonstrated some lovely jabs. It was a good display of boxing. The third round, for a small man, that Spaniard was strong as an ox. But in that third, it was all Edwards. He was untouchable. He was hitting and not being hit. He also nailed Moreno with a lovely straight right. It was like a pot shot kind of thing. In the fourth round, that was when Edwards started to showboat. He made his man miss, and he looked at the miss. It was like Billy Joe Saunders' style, where he glazed up into the crowd at the very top tier. And, he even did some of the hands down, chin out, Prince Nassim tactics, and he even did a bit of Ali shuffling, I think. So a clear Edwards round there, not for the showboating, obviously, for the better boxing. But when the pair were wrestling, Edwards was getting the better of that at times, whereas Moreno, for his little size, was quite a strong guy. But when Edwards wanted to win the war of wrestles, he did manage to do so. The fifth round, it was too much class from Edwards. He was enjoying it in there. It looked quite easy. He was a level above his man. He was switching from orthodox to southpaw. There was not much else really to say about his performance. He pretty much did everything. And like I say, the Spaniard didn't look like he was ready to go anywhere. He was a real tough guy. Perhaps an ounce of frustration was kicking him for Moreno, I think, in the seventh round. Whenever he loaded up, Charlie was long gone, and he made him hit fresh air, and he was starting to load up quite a lot, Marino. In the 8th round, that was where there was a knockdown. It was definitely a bit of a slip in my opinion, but it didn't really make much difference. It was a right jab from the southpaw stance. Like I say, Charlie Edwards was switching stance. He was changing direction. He was changing stances pretty much all night long. The 9th round was a real big round, actually, for Edwards. He had a lot of success. He was pinning Marino on the ropes, but again, he just wasn't ready to go anywhere. In the 10th round, we saw more showboating from Edwards. Lovely skills, though, and it was a beautiful demonstration of some fantastic boxing. In the 11th round, it was pretty much more of the same, and in the 12th round, he finished very strong also, and I had it, I think, the same as the judges, 120-107, because you had to count that knockdown that happened in the 8th. So yeah, 120-107, a complete shutout, pure domination. Once again, just one nice word on Marino. He had a serious big heart, and the fact that he didn't really get overly frustrated all fight, despite running out of ideas quite early on. You know, he was as game as they come, so credit to him. Very tough guy. That's it, though, for the Copper Box. Moving out now to the hangar in Costa Mesa, California, USA. This is coming down to the final couple of bills here. This one was a top-ranked show, by the way. What did we have over here? Kubrat Pulev moved to 27-1, a KO in the 7th round against Bogdan Dinu. He didn't manage to do it quicker than Big Baby Miller, but it was what it was. He was actually cut himself in round 4, and he had a point deducted for hitting his opponent while he was down in that 7th round at one point. But Dinu was actually down 3 times in the 7th round, and like I say, the KO came in that round there. 27-1 now, Pulev, and Dinu is 18-2. And the main event, Jesse Magdaleno, 26-1 now. It was his first fight back against Rico Ramos here. Of course, like I say, the first fight back from the loss to Isaac Dogbe. Rico Ramos is now 30-6. It was for the vacant WBC United States featherweight title, a unanimous decision over 10 rounds for Magdaleno. I should also mention on that bill, the younger brother of Kubrat Pulev, Tervel Pulev, he picked up a win on points over 6 rounds unanimously against Mitch Williams. Pulev actually had a point deducted, so both the Pulevs had points deducted. This one, though, was for hitting on the break, but it didn't really matter in the 6 rounds. Like I say, unanimously there. Tervel Pulev 13-0, Mitch Williams 16-8 with 3 draws. And the final bill to mention happened at the MGM National Harbor in Oxon Hill, Maryland, USA. It was a bad night for the Peterson brothers, that's all I'll say. Anthony Peterson got a split draw against Argenis Mendez, a fight where I think Mendez probably did enough to nick it. A split draw over 10 rounds. Peterson now 37-1 with 1 draw. Argenis Mendez, that's his second draw, 25-5 with 2 draws. And the main event, like I say, Lamont Peterson, Ayaz, 35-5 with 1 draw. That is how his record will stay. He retired after the fight. He was knocked out in the 10th round, a TKO in favour of Sergei Lipinets, who's now 15-1. It was a lovely little finish, actually, by Lipinets. He disguised that big right hand. He kind of popped a half-hearted jab out, and he dipped to his right and came back up with the right hand over the top. He managed to stagger Peterson very badly, and Peterson took the punch really bad, and he staggered into the ropes, and then Lipinets jumped on him, and Peterson was pretty defenceless. Like I say, he got dropped, and the towel came in also, and after the fight, like I say, he retired. I think it's the right time. I think really he probably shouldn't have moved up from 140. I think his best days were left at 140. He had that one fight at, I think it was 143 pounds when he took on Danny Garcia, and he arguably beat Garcia, by the way, but he was still a world champion at 140. They just didn't put their belts on the line. It was one of the weirdest things ever. They both had titles. It could have been a unification. It should have been a unification, and after that, he moved up, like I say, properly to welterweight. He was never really suited for the weight. He did manage to beat Felix Diaz and take his O. He also beat David Avanesian, a man that we're going to be talking about later on in the show. But yeah, he lost to Spence. He was way too small for Spence. And Lipinets also managed to beat him here. But he went out on his shield, Lamont Peterson. He's got a big heart. He always showed that. And like I say, it was certainly the right time. I didn't want to see him stick around for too long and perhaps get hurt. Just going through the predictions from last week, let's mention them here. Yeah, we all gained 3 points. We all picked Charlie Edwards on points. We all picked Buatsi by knockout. We all picked Okoli by knockout. None of us got the Peterson and Lipinets fight right. I went with Peterson on points. So did you, Ayaz, and the listeners went with Lipinets on points. But like I say, none of us predicted correctly that Lipinets would get the stoppage. But that's about it for the review part of the show. Just before we wrap up part one, we've tried to whiz through it. We truly have. The last thing to do is to welcome guest number one. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the super featherweight world contender himself. It is, of course, Mr. Jamel Herring. Jamel, welcome back on the show, my man.
Hey, man, it's always great talking to you, brother.
Honestly, man, it's exactly the same from me. It's great speaking to you always, Jamel. We last spoke in December. It was right before your last fight with Adilson dos Santos. The tough Brazilian did take you 10 rounds despite you dropping him in the first and second. Please talk us through that one.
Oh, man, yeah, man. He's a tough guy. I thought after the second knockdown, that I would get him out there. But, I took my time, didn't want to rush it. He also had a good fight with Mick Collin, who I'm actually, friends with as well. So, the guy's been around. Also, he's contending for a world title. I believe Jesse Magdaleno at 122 at the time. But, so, yeah, I know he was going to be a durable guy, but I thought I was going to get him out of there. But I just took the rounds just to, tune him on some things and took the experience and just moved on after the fight.
Absolutely, and moved on you did. On to the next one. You'll be taking on Masayuki Ito for his WBO Super-Featherweight world title. The fight is set to take place in Florida on May 25th. Just before we talk about the actual fight itself, May 25th, of course, isn't just the date of the fight. That date also has a seriously deep meaning to you. For those that don't know, Jamel, please explain.
May 25th would have been my daughter's 10th birthday. Those who follow my story know that my daughter, Ariana, had passed away from SIDS at 2 months old. So May 25th is significant to me every year. And, I look at it, people ask me with the date, would the fight distract me and landing on a date? And I said no, because I feel like, I've coped with it very well over the years. And I look at it as a sign of motivation. Like, I believe everything happens for a reason. It's not a coincidence. Like, I don't believe Top Rank just picked this date, just because of that. For most reasons, they actually chose a date because it lands on Memorial Day weekend here in the States. But it's just funny how, like, things play out. And I'm just taking it as, as a sign of motivation. And, it's just a sign also that this is my time and I just want to take a full advantage of it.
And obviously, with that date being such a deep kind of date for you, you mentioned there, people are asking, will it affect you? It must kind of put a little bit of pressure on you, a little bit of added pressure, but is it healthy pressure? Is that what you'd say it is?
Oh, yeah, of course. I think if anything, I'll put more pressure on myself because, like I said, this fight isn't just any other fight. It's a world title at the end of the day. We're competing for a world title. You've known me personally, that you've seen the road I had to come just to get where I'm at. It hasn't been an easy road. So I feel like, I had to take full advantage of the opportunity. So if anything, if we're going to mention pressure, I'll say that I'll be the one probably pressuring myself throughout this camp to make sure that I go out there and train the best that I possibly can and perform, really well when it comes to fight night.
And tell me about Masayuki Ito, Jamel. He's coming off 2 good wins over Christopher Diaz and Evgeny Chuprikov. He's a good fighter. Yeah. I take nothing from Ito.
I don't take anything from anybody who's won a world championship ever in boxing. I gave every champion the full respect. But I do believe that I have a great chance of taking the belt from Ito, just mainly because Ito is basically still learning on the job. He hasn't had an amateur career. He went straight to the pros, and even that is a sign of respect, because not too many people in today's boxing world can just jump up, put a pair of boxing gloves on, go straight into the pros and actually become a world champion. So you have to acknowledge that and give him credit for that. But also you have to look at it as, he's basically learning on the job still. So I have to basically take full advantage of my experience and put it to great use.
And the thing that I did notice is that Chuprikov and Diaz are both 5'5", 5'6". Of course, you're 5'10", and you're a southpaw, so you've got the size advantage in this one pretty clearly. He's not used to fighting guys your height.
Oh yeah, and I'm glad you pointed it out because I actually been looking at that myself. I mean, I take nothing from Ito, but I feel like, you see Christopher Diaz is about to fight my good friend Shakur Stevenson soon on April 20th, the Bud Crawford American fight, which I'll be there. I'll be there in attendance. But Christopher Diaz was, to me, I always thought he was more of a featherweight. His last opponent also, like you should point out, was half his size. He was the number one contender, so you can't take nothing from Ito. He did what he had to do as a champion. But I feel that, he just didn't have the skill set to bother Ito. And like you said, he was just smaller. He was just half the size. But going into this fight, I'm actually going to be, the bigger man. And also, like you pointed out, a southpaw. I don't know how well he's done with southpaws in the past, if he's even fought any southpaws. But like I said, I have to take all these aspects and use them to my advantage when it comes to the fight.
Yeah, I think he actually did fight a southpaw about 4 fights ago. A guy called Lorenzo Villanueva. He beat him.
Okay.
I think it was a 10 round or 8 round or something like that. He beat him quite handily, but obviously he wasn't a southpaw like yourself. He probably didn't have the advantage. I haven't looked into him too much in terms of the height advantage. As you mentioned there, your gym mate Terence Crawford, he's got his own test. You're going to be there in attendance April 20th. At first, when this fight got made, I've got to be honest, I thought it was a bit of a mismatch. I thought that Terence was just going to obliterate him really, and that could be the way it pans out. But I'm starting to think as the fight gets closer that Amir Khan's got a real chance here. Of course, the quick hands, can be a problem for anyone. How do you see that fight playing out, Jamel?
Oh yeah, I mean, of course. I always had a great deal of respect for Amir Khan. A lot of people tend to forget when the last time I came to the UK back in the 2012 Olympic Games, Amir Khan had opened his gym up to the team. So I always knew Amir when he came to the States, fighting on the PBC cards at the time and things like that nature. So, I always had a great deal of respect for Amir Khan. And like you pointed out, Amir Khan is not an easy task for anybody. Even Terrence knows that. If you really break down Amir Khan's resume, who has basically, got the best of him in a full 12-round decision bout? If anything, people they try to, knock him off for his knockout losses or whatever. But even in those fights, like the Canelo fight, he was competitive in that fight until he got knocked out. The Danny Garcia fight, he was winning that fight handily. He was winning that fight, and then he just got caught. So you can't take anything from Amir Khan. I mean, look what he did to guys like Marcos Maidana and other champions as well. So I think it's a better fight than most people are giving it. Of course, I'm rooting for my stablemate Terence Crawford, but at the same time, I don't think it's going to be a walkover in the park.
Hopefully not. Hopefully it's competitive. It will be exciting. I mean, all of Amir Khan's fights are exciting.
Right.
The biggest fight that can be made at the minute in your division has to be Gervonta Davis and Tevin Farmer, a fight that we've been talking about for quite a while. It seems like they're bringing offers to the table now. If it does happen, who do you see emerging victorious there, Jamel?
It's hard. It's hard to point out. Of course, most people will say Gervonta Davis. Of course, I believe Gervonta Davis. If I'm being, fully honest, with the division, he's probably the number one top dog in the division right now. But as you've seen, Tevin Farmer has gotten better over the past couple of years or so, and he's growing and learning with each fight. So you gotta take everything into aspect with that fight. But of course, a lot of people are gonna lean towards, like I said, towards Gervonta Davis. But I believe it's a better fight than most people will give it.
Yeah, for sure, I agree also. And I've tried to go through those questions pretty quickly. I've pretty much run out. Have you got any closing words at all, or anything else that you want to announce or say at all before we let you go?
I just want to let people also know that like a lot of people don't know, this year is a big year for me. Hopefully we get through Ito as planned, but my promoter also has big plans for me to unify with the winner at Vargas and Burchell. I actually wanted that fight as well because I felt that a lot of people just took Burchelt as like the basically, other than Gervonta Davis, the other boogeyman in the division. So hopefully that opportunity comes, and if it does, I'm just letting everybody know that I'm jumping right at it firsthand. But those are my plans for this year. My plan first is the absolute Ito first, and then hopefully before the year is over, I'll get to see the winner out of Vargas and Burchelt.
And that truly would be amazing, Jamel. I really want to thank you for your time, and I truly mean it when I say that I would absolutely love to see you become world champion on May 25th. I wish you all the very luck in the world in achieving that, my friend. Thank you.
Thank you, man. We'll talk soon. We'll always talk, brother. But I appreciate you, man.
Okay, now it's time for part 2 on this week's show. This part, of course, the news part of the show. Ayaz, talk to me. What you got? So
Tyson Fury has announced he will face Tom Squirts on June the 15th at the Thomas Mack Center in Las Vegas.
Yeah, Tom Schwartz, a man who a lot of people were saying they've never heard of him. I'm not quite sure that's 100% true. I mean, I'd heard of him. Perhaps it's because we're always whizzing through BoxRec pretty much all day long. But yeah, Tom Schwartz is a guy, for those that don't know, he's 24-0. He's got 16 knockouts. He's a 24-year-old guy, so he's a young heavyweight. I think he had quite a hard fight with Senad Gashi, but Gashi actually got disqualified. Obviously, Gashi went on to take on Carlos Takam, and he's also fighting Derek Chisora next month on that April 20th show. But yeah, I mean, he's never fought someone of the caliber of Tyson Fury. It's pretty much an easy fight, really. I don't think he had a great amateur career. If anything, there's nothing about him having an amateur career that I can see. So yeah, it's an easy first touch. The good thing is, I think he's ranked number 2 with the WBO, so that's perhaps what it was. So when Frank Warren said he will be taking on a guy that's in the top 5, he delivered on that promise, and it's Tom Schwartz. Like I say, it's not a massive fight. Deontay Wilder versus Dominic Breazeale, another fight that's been finalised. A lot of people don't really want to see those fights. They want to see the big three fighting each other, and out of the big three, I think it's right in saying that this is probably the worst one. I mean, I'm much more looking forward to Wilder, Breazeale and Joshua, Big Baby Miller, to be honest, than this one. But, it is what it is. I love Tyson Fury, and we're going to tune in because we love Tyson Fury, and that's about it. But, yeah, I mean, it's nothing more than an easy touch, really, and you can't really dress it up.
And finally, Billy Joe Saunders will face Shifa Isufi for the WBO Interim Super Middleweight title on May the 18th at Lame Stadium, the home of Stevenage Football Club.
Yeah, this is a fight that we knew was going to happen. We just wasn't sure if there was going to be a belt on the line. It ends up being the interim title. I think they're probably hoping that Gilberto Ramirez does have that one fight at 175 and he likes the weight, and then he relinquishes the belt. And then because Billy Joe Saunders is... if he wins, he'll be the interim champion. He'll probably get elevated without having to fight. So that's probably their plan of how he'll become a 2-weight world champion, Billy Joe Saunders. But yeah, I mean, he's announced Ben Davison as his full-time trainer now. Ben Davison, I think, trains 3 fighters: Isaac Lowe, Tyson Fury, and Billy Joe Saunders. All 3 of those guys are completely unbeaten. So he's got a real talent pool on his hands there. Yeah, I mean, Billy Joe Saunders, I'm not a big fan of all the trainer switches and stuff like that, but I don't know why he keeps switching trainers when he hasn't really had a bad performance. If anything, his one bad performance came when Ben Davison was in his corner. So it's a weird one, but the best of luck to him. I've reached out to him to try and get him on the show, as I've done many, many times. I'm not quite sure that I should hold my breath on that, but yeah, it'd be great to get him on the podcast at one point, but it doesn't look very likely. All the very best to him, though. A great fighter.
And that's it for the news.
Okay, thank you very much, Ayaz. Right, let's move over now to the preview part of the show. We're going to start here at the Mattamy Event Centre in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Over here we get to see friend of the show, DeMarcus Corley, 51-32 with 1 draw. Former world champion, former opponent of Floyd Mayweather. He takes on the unbeaten Custio Clayton, who's 15-0, a guy that obviously, you know, is on the up. He's actually 31 years of age, but yeah, Corley's being brought in to try and look like a good name on his record pretty much, and that's about it. I'm hoping Corley can get the win, like I say, a friend of the show, but yeah, this guy, Custio Clayton, is a former Olympian. He was in the 2012 Olympics. He actually lost to Fred Evans in the quarterfinals, so a decent fighter there. You'd expect him to win. Also on the bill, Alexander Teslenko, 15-0. He takes on Fabio Maldonado. That was actually the guy that was supposed to fight Nathan Gorman last weekend. I'm not quite sure why the fight fell through and then Kevin Kingpin Johnson stepped in, but he's fighting this weekend. Perhaps it was for more money. He takes on Alexander Teslenko, a heavyweight there that's making a bit of noise. I think he's from Ukraine. That's probably a guess there, but I'm probably right. At the Ulster Hall in Belfast, Northern Ireland, United Kingdom. This one's an MTK show here. Over here we get to see Conrad Cummins, 16-2 with one draw. He fights Luke Keeler in a rematch, 15-2 with one draw. Of course, Luke Keeler won the first one. It's for the WBO European middleweight title, a 10-round contest there. I'd expect Keeler to win once again, to be honest. I think Keeler boxed fantastically in their first fight, and it wasn't really close enough to warrant a rematch, but you know, it is what it is. That's about it for that one. Moving out now to the Seagulls Rugby League Club in Tweed Heads in New South Wales. What a venue this one is. We spoke about his brother earlier, Andrew. This is now Jason Maloney, 17-1. He takes on Chris Paulino, 19-3. That's a 10-rounder for Maloney's WBA Oceania Bantamweight title. Moving out now to the Bilbao Arena in Spain, as we're going to go to the predictions on this. Kerman Lejarraga, the man that beat Bradley Ski, he beat Frankie Gavin. He takes on friend of the show, David Avanesian. This one is for Lejarraga's EBU European welterweight title. Lejarraga 27-0, David Avanesian 23-3 with one draw. How do you see this fight going? Of course, we want Avanesian to win.
Obviously, we want David Avanesian to win, so we can see that Josh Kelly fight. But obviously, we see Lejarraga. I think he's a very strong fighter. So if I'm going to go with a win, I'm going to go with Lejarraga to win by knockout.
Lejarraga by knockout. Okay, you're not on your own there. The listeners agree with you, Ayaz. I am going to go, though, with Avanesian to win on points. I just think that, you know, Bradley Skeet just couldn't take the body shots from Lejarraga. I think he also let the occasion get to him. Frankie Gavin gave Lejarraga a decent fight till he got stopped. But again, he was way too small for him. And I think that Avanesian's probably got the better experience over Lejarraga for sure, and over Bradley Ski and Frankie Gavin, because I think, you know, Avanesian's fought all over the place. He's been out to America. He fought Shane Mosley. He fought Lamont Peterson, who we talked about earlier. And I just think that those kind of fights there do a lot, really, for your experience. I don't think he's going to get overwhelmed. He's from the deep forests in Russia. He's been over here and fought in the UK before, of course. He's been, I think, some other country somewhere. So he's quite well travelled. He spars hard with a lot of guys, and I just think that he's hardened enough to not let the occasion get to him, to not be overwhelmed, and I think he's a better boxer than Lejarraga, and I just don't see Lejarraga walking through him. Though I've got to say, when David Avanesian lost by knockout to Igis Kavalauskis, that kind of, you know, I don't want to say exposed Avanesian, but that made me think, well, you know, he really can be walked through. I'm just not quite sure that Lejarraga's got the kind of background that Kavalauskis has got. In fact, I know he doesn't. So I don't think he'll be able to do a job like Kavalauskis did. And I can see it going the distance. I'm just hoping that they don't do a bad night of officiating. I hope that the judges are fair, and I hope that David Avanesian emerges victorious. But that's about it for that one. Moving out now to the Novotel in Southampton, Ayaz. You could be attending this one. Yeah, you should turn up for that one. Fighting on this bill, Joe Pigford. I've got to mention him, 14-0. I think he's only had one fight or two fights maximum since beating Aaron Morgan, a fighter that fights in the same gym as Bradley Skeet. It's so interlinked now. I'm talking about guys that train with guys that we just mentioned, that fought guys that we mentioned in part one, stuff like that. But anyway, Joe Pigford's a good fighter. I really liked watching him in the fight against Aaron Morgan. It was a fantastic fight, and since then I don't even think he's fought on TV. If my memory serves me right, I'm pretty sure that win over Aaron Morgan was on the undercard of Liam Walsh and Gervonta Davis. So to only have 1 or 2 fights since then is terrible. I'm not quite sure what's going on with him. I don't know why he's been out the ring so long. That's it for that one. Moving out now to the Echo Arena. This is the biggest bill to mention. It's happening in Liverpool. It's going to be on Sky, of course. Over here, Paul Butler, 27-2. No opponent just yet. That's a 6th rounder there. Natasha Jonas returns to action, 6-1. That's 6 2-minute rounds. No opponent just yet. David Price, 23-6. Ayaz, 10-round contest against the undefeated Cash Ali, 15-0. Again, with Price, the Ayaz, you just never know what you're going to get. What's your prediction for that one?
Obviously, it's in his hometown of Liverpool. He's fighting Cash Ali. So if I'm going to go win the win, I'm going to go with David Price to win by knockout. So I think the fans will be behind him, and I think it's just going to motivate him even more. So I think he's going to get the win.
We certainly hope so. We don't dislike David Price. We don't dislike Big David Price on this show. It's a 10-round contest. I don't see it going the distance at all. I know Cash Ali's very, very confident, and I just think that David Price, I know we can't put him on a pedestal and say he's fantastic because he's been found out, and he really can go down as one of the biggest underachievers right now in modern times. You know, he was again like Lewis Ritson, absolutely smashing through British level, and then when he stepped up, he got found out. You know, losing back-to-back to Tony Thompson by stoppage was really bad, and, you know, it played a massive part in the fights and everything since then. He just doesn't quite have it, David Price. But I think he probably does have a little bit too much for Cash Ali, and I think David Price, with his experience, probably does get the stoppage. Also on the bill, a great grudge match. This has been Ayaz. Just watching the back and forth on Twitter and Instagram has been very, very entertaining. It's a shame it's all going to come to an end and they're going to get it on. It's been so great. Anthony Fowler, 9-0, takes on Scott Fitzgerald, 12-0. A lot of bad blood in this one, Ayaz. I'm actually going to go with a Fowler stoppage here. Oh, by the way, the listeners went with Price by knockout also, so we're all in agreement there. Fowler, I'm going to go with him to win by knockout against Fitzgerald. The listeners agree. How do you see it, Ayaz? Do you give Fitzgerald a chance?
They're obviously two. They're both on the same GB squad, the Scott Fitzgerald and Anthony Fowler. So if I'm going to go with the win, I'm going to go with Anthony Fowler to win by points.
Anthony Fowler on points. Okay, that's very interesting because Anthony Fowler's, I think, won all but one fight by knockout, and Scott Fitzgerald has won most of his fights by knockout, but the one guy that took Fowler the distance also took Fitzgerald the distance. You know, I think his name's Laszlo Fekete or something like that. I could be completely messing that up, but the same guy took them both the distance. I'd love to know what. I'd love to get him on the show. Wouldn't it be great? I think he's Hungarian. It'd be great to get him on the show and see who he thinks is going to win. I think he actually got dropped by Fitzgerald. I could be wrong in that one, but anyway, leaving that there. The same man definitely went the distance with a pair of them. Also on the bill, Joe Hughes, 17-3 with one draw. He puts his EBU European Super Lightweight title on the line against Robbie Davies Jr., friend of the show, 17-1. He also puts his British Super Lightweight title on the line, a 12-rounder, like I say. Joe Hughes and Robbie Davies Jr. How do you see that one? The listeners are going with Robbie Davies on points.
Yes, I think Robbie Davies. If I'm going to go with win, I'm going to go Robbie Davies to win on points.
We're all in agreement, very much like last week when we all pretty much agreed on everything but one. It looks like it's that same kind of feel here. Joe Hughes, obviously, he's physically disabled, but a tremendous boxer. Amazing that he's managed to achieve a European title, the proper title also. Robbie Davies Jr., very, very confident. Most of his wins, of course, have come by knockout. I just think Hughes has got that ring savvy, and he's a bit too smart, and he's a bit too tough to be stopped. So I think, yes, it does go points. Also on the bill, topping the bill, Liam Smith, Ayaz, 26-2 with one draw, coming off. I think he's coming off that loss to Munguia. I don't think he's fought since, but it is his Matchroom debut. He takes on Sam Eggington, a man that, of course, lost to that Hassan Mwakinyo, and I think he had one win the other week just to kind of, get back in the swing of winning, because both men were topping a bill and both men were coming off losses. It was terrible on paper there. But Sam Eggington, 24-5. Liam Smith, like I say, 26-2 with one draw. How does it go for you?
If I'm going to go with a win, I'm going to go with Liam Smith to win by points.
Liam Smith on points. The listeners are going with Liam Smith by knockout, and I have to agree. I just think that if Moakinyo can stop you in, 2 rounds, then there was no excuse for that. There was no excuse for that. He said he was tight at the weight at 147. He moved up to 154. This guy came in from Africa who no one had heard of, and, he only had about 5 days' notice, and he completely obliterated Eggington. I think Eggington's been in, a few too many wars, and I think Liam Smith is going to just completely smash him, really. I hope I'm wrong, because, Sam Eggington's a friend of the show. I'd like to see him win. It'd be unbelievable for him to win. We all know he's got a fantastic story. To go on to beat Malignaggi like he did, he's had a real cool, inspiring story, and his career has been brilliant. He's achieved a lot himself. But yeah, I just think that Sam Eggington gets stopped. I think Liam Smith with his body shots is going to cause a lot of problems. Moving out now to the final bill to mention at the 2300 Arena in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, USA. There's only really there's 2 fights to mention actually over here. I'm going to talk about 2 fights. Starting on the undercard here, we have Ray Robinson, 24-3. Fighter from Philly, so this is in his hometown. He's coming off a loss by knockout in the 7th round to Yordenis Ugas. He takes on a man that we mentioned earlier, Egis Kavalauskas, the man that knocked out David Avanesian. Also, by the way, Ray Robinson, aside from that loss to Ugas by knockout, he went the distance with Sean Porter back in 2010, and he lost another fight somewhere. But yeah, it's a decent enough fight. But you'd expect Kavalauskas again, if he's as special as I think he is, then we'd expect him to win the fight. And topping the bill, Alexander Gvozdyk gets his first defence here of his WBC World Light Heavyweight title. Obviously, he won it in devastating fashion when he stopped Adonis Stevenson in the 11th round. Obviously, Stevenson's life has took a very bad turn since then. Prayers with him still. But yeah, this is his first defence. It's going to be interesting to see if there's any lasting effects on him that's going to kind of prevent him from, giving the fight his all. Hopefully that's not the case. We see that time and time again in boxing. Sergei Kovalev didn't let situations like that bother him. This guy is pretty much cut from the same cloth. 16-0, like I say. He takes on Dudu Ngumbu, a guy with a record of 38-8. The problem is Ngumbu has got 3 losses to Igor McCulkin. He lost to Igor McCulkin all 3 times on points, and his 1 stoppage loss actually came to Najib Mohammadi back in 2012. How do we see this one going, Ayaz?
If I'm going to go with I'm going to go with Gvozdyk to win by knockout.
Gvozdyk? Okay, all right, I'll let you butcher that name and get away with it. But yeah, I think you're right. I think I'm going to agree with you there. The listeners also go with that. It wouldn't surprise me if it went to points, but I'm going to stick with that knockout there. And the final fight, I just missed this one here. It's on the undercard. Cassius Chaney, friend of the show, heavyweight prospect, undefeated, 14-0. He takes on Christian Mariscal, who is 12-2, and that is it. That's a 6th rounder there. And that is it for the preview part of the show. Just before we wrap up, the last thing to do, you know what it is. It's to welcome guest number 2. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the undefeated American prospect. It is, of course, Mr. Blair Cobbs. Blair, welcome back on the show, my man.
Hey,
it's great to have you back on.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you back on, Blair. It was great having you on before. I remember at the time that you told us that you were one of the first people to ever do a double backflip, age 5. I think a lot of people loved that one. We last spoke in July of last year. It was a couple of days before the Juan Rivera fight. Of course, you ended up winning the fight over 4 rounds unanimously. The fight ended up, a bit of a crazy one because, of course, it happened at, pretty much middleweight. What happened there?
Oh, like in that fight that you're talking about?
Yeah.
Well, most guys can't make the weight, man. So I just walk in, put a couple things in my pocket to try to make the weight look even, and just go in and fight. That's how it usually is. I make 147 pretty easy, because I'm only like 153, 154 walking around, and I train year round. So
yeah, because if I'm not mistaken, wasn't it like a last minute replacement of opponent for that fight, or am I wrong there?
Yeah, last minute replacement opponent. Look, a lot of these fights, I'm actually calling out major fighters, but then they They don't take the fight. Like, okay, the one in Las Vegas where I got like a last minute guy. What ends up happening is that there was a major Golden Boy fighter that was like 9-0, 10-0, a 9-0, 10-0 guy, and I just came off my last win, and I'm like, I want to get on this card. And they're like, no, we can't have you on the card. I was like, okay, then how about this guy? He don't have an opponent. All right, I'll take that fight. And then they're like, and then the people, the guys from their camp said, okay, we'll take the fight. And then they called back later on and declined the fight. They changed their mind on the fight. So what ends up happening, I'm like, okay. I'm like, okay, all right, Golden Boy, how about this? Since he don't want to fight, how about you take him off the card and put me on the card? And we'll put anybody in there. Anybody that's willing to fight under short notice, we'll take the fight and we'll fight. And that's how we got on the card. We're kind of like muscling our way into the entertainment business of boxing through those type of measures. Even in the last fight, I fought this guy named Ferdinand Kerobyan, and that was kind of like a last minute thing, whereas though they didn't think I would take the fight, like, you know, because I was a major underdog. Right now we're in the process of just taking these big fights and taking gambles and making the wins big too.
Yeah, I want to get onto that in a moment or two. Obviously, that fight I mentioned there against Juan Rivera, you were actually back in the ring just 2 weeks later. Of course, that one took place at welterweight. You went on to stop Emmanuel Valadez, I believe it was, in round 2. Tell us about that one.
Yeah, and that's how it happened. I came in there hard and strong. I was very excited from the last fight, and I just kept the momentum going, and got that early stoppage. You know, once I get going and I have the experience, it's really not too much stopping me. I have a whole lot of experience and a whole lot of charisma and ability, especially when it comes to being in that four square circle right there. So
okay. And like you mentioned there, most recently, last Thursday, you fought Ferdinand Kerobyan in his hometown. Obviously, Kerobyan was a decent amateur. He was the big favourite to win the fight, but you were able to unanimously outpoint him over 8 rounds, marking that fight surely as your best win thus far, Blair.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely my best win thus far. It was a very exciting fight. I was very excited to have the fight presented to me. I was very excited to be able to show my talent and my abilities. If you look at the fight closely, I'm pretty much winning every single round. I'm actually surprised that he survived, because me personally, I had him not surviving that fight. I thought that he would get knocked out within like 5 rounds. If not knocked out, stopped within 5 to 6 rounds. And he held on tough. He held on tough, very tough fighter. But if you look at the fight, I'm like really having a good time. I'm smiling. I'm putting on a show, and it's been like that from the very, very first day of the weigh-in all the way throughout the fight, in between the rounds. And it was a really fun experience being in there. The crowd was like really, really vicious. They wanted to kill me after that fight.
And obviously, with the win, you picked up the NABF junior welterweight title. Initially, when I saw junior welterweight, I assumed it was 140, but it's actually a welterweight title just because you're considered a junior, right?
Yeah, it's the NABF junior title.
Yeah, exactly.
They have apparently they have 2 titles. They have the junior and then the senior, which is the regular NABF title. And I'm pretty sure I will be getting the regular NABF title pretty soon. But the junior title is what we were fighting for. And it's funny because the play on words can make you think that it was the junior welterweight, because the junior welterweight is a complete different division at 140.
Exactly, yeah. It was a bit confusing when I first read it. But I've got to say this, Blair. in 3 of your last 4 fights, there have been accidental headbutts. Are you just extremely unlucky and you keep fighting guys that use their head, or are you the culprit?
You would think that, right? I'm honestly, it's just things that be just happening when these guys come in.
Because the most recent fight you had, it was you got cut.
Like,
you got cut. The most recent fight on Thursday, right?
No, actually, I didn't get cut. I didn't get cut at all. Actually, like my skin on one of my eyes had opened up, but that was like after the fight.
Okay.
After the fight had gone through, I had put some inswelling stuff. It was a plastic bag, and the plastic bag kind of opened my face just the tiniest bit, and but like I didn't even get cut in the fight. It was actually the other guy that got cut. What's happening is that these guys that come in there and they use their head and they try to come forward on me, and like instead of just me backing up because they think that I'm going to just back up and run away, I would stand my ground. And that's how an accidental headbutt, a lot of times that stuff occurs, from that particular thing that happens.
Okay.
You know, and then there's a lot of other situations too. Like I fought this other guy that had tons of fights, had a whole lot of fights, and there was an accidental headbutt again, but that was from the guy threw like a hook, and I ducked under it, and then he pulled my head. He pulled my head towards his face to try to give me a cut in my face, and what I ended up doing is pull him, like instead of just taking the impact of the face to face like headbutt, I pulled my head down, so his face would hit my forehead instead of hitting my face, and it was just like, oh my God, he pulled me into a headbutt. I was like, wow, like he almost got me.
Now,
so
I probably asked you this last time that you were on the show, Blair. I think I said, which division were you sort of targeting? I think you were below 147 before. Then we did the interview. Then you had this fight up at 157. Now you're back at welterweight. Welterweight is the division for you, right?
Well, yeah. Like what ends up happening is that my first fight with Golden Boy, they made me fight exactly 140. And he had a guy coming up from probably 130s. I'm not sure. And it was very hard making the weight. I was weight drained ridiculously. And I had a horrible fight because of it. My body couldn't keep up with that weight. And it's probably because like I'm training year round, so I don't really have any time off. So whatever my walk around weight is, it has that has to be where I fight at, most likely. So like I was walking around 147, 148, 149, and maybe up to like 50. I never really get too much past like 52, 53. And then when it was time to lose all that weight to 140, I couldn't get that last bit of pounds off. And then when I did, it was very hard for me to have a good performance. So after that, I just decided, you know what? Me and my team told me, hey, you need to move up in weight like that. Like that's completely different compared to what's going on when you're in the gym. And it was crazy because throughout the preparation, I'm knocking out sparring partners. I'm doing great. I'm looking fantastic. And then I had to start losing the weight. And then the weight was really detrimental to my health. And then so like I just had to leave that alone. And then the other fights, when I ended up getting those fights that's a little bit higher than 147, it's because of these opponents. They never made weight. They will always like come in heavier than 147, so I just had to deal with that. But 147 is definitely my weight class. That's for sure. It takes absolutely nothing to make the weight for me because I walk around it, and it makes it a whole lot easier. I only have one opponent. While these other guys are fighting, they got to fight the weight, they got to fight me, and then they also got to fight their own self with whatever mental problems that they're dealing with. With me, I only have to fight my opponent. I don't fight my weight. I'm not fighting the scale. I'm not fighting myself. I'm just fighting the opponent, and that makes it a whole lot easier. I feel like that was one of the biggest things that made a difference between like me and some of these other welterweights.
Okay, cool stuff. So at welterweight, I want to talk about the champions. When we last spoke, you mentioned that you was a huge Manny Pacquiao fan. We talked about the upcoming at the time Pacquiao versus Matisse fight. I think I said it was like a real 50-50 because Pacquiao had, he hadn't been looking so great recently with the horn loss and stuff like that. You adamantly picked Pacquiao to get the win. Not only did he get the win, he also stopped Matisse. Since then, he's also beat Broner and he's looked real good doing that. What do you want Manny to do next, Blair?
Honestly, man, all I want Manny to do is just retire and stay, and stay safe. Stay safe in boxing. Just stay safe and retire and be the legend that he is and retire. That's what I think that Manny should do. Honestly, because Manny is one of my favorite fighters. But like right now, he's expired. In boxing, it's like this: everybody's eating at the table, right? There's a table. Anybody that truly wants it can get a seat at that table. But guess what? We all can't sit at the table at once. You know what I'm saying? So you have a seat. You have a seat, and when it's your time, you have to get up out your seat, or some young person is going to come along and snatch that seat right from under you and sit down at that chair. And then that's just it. So, like, no matter what, like, your time is always going to be limited in boxing. Your time as far as becoming a world champion, your time as being a legend, your time is always going to be limited. And right now, I see Manny Pacquiao as his time is up. Like even for me, like I look at him like, yo, dude, I could eat him right now. Like he looks like a snack to me. He looks like, okay, I could snatch that right now. And it's not to say that anything's wrong with Manny Pacquiao. It's just he's older and he's up there in age and it's about time for him to retire. He's already done everything. He's given everything to boxing. So I think boxing needs to give a little bit more to him and allow him to retire gracefully.
Okay, interesting point. Errol Spence's win over Mikey Garcia. I mean, I'm one of Mikey's biggest fans. It was sad to see him lose from my standpoint, but he was always, going to be up against it, giving away that much size. Does that win do much for Spence, though? Does that win solidify him further as a top welterweight?
I think it helps a little bit, but I don't really know. Like, it's because the whole thing is, like, Mikey wasn't really a welterweight, and even Mikey had his own flaws within, like, his boxing abilities. So it was kind of like a token fight more so than like a fight that's going to catapult him to the next level. If you wanted a fight that could catapult him to the next level, he would take the Terrence Crawford fight. You get what I'm saying? Because Terrence Crawford is special. Terrence Crawford is blowing people out of the water, and could beat even those guys that are like that have the belt right now, like Sean Porter. He'll give Sean Porter a hard run for his money. He'll give pretty much anybody else a run for their money, even though he's a smaller guy. As far as the smaller guys concerned, that guy I feel like would be the better fight if he wanted to push his career to like that next hemisphere. He needs a mega fight. He needs a big fight with maybe Keith Thurman, Sean Porter, or need I say Terrence Crawford.
Yeah, and speaking of those guys there, Blair, Keith Thurman, he's come back to the ring since we last spoke. He did brilliantly in the early part of the fight, but it ended very worryingly. What did you make of his ring return? That ring rust is certainly real.
Yeah, I see a lot of ring rust. I see some technical difficulties. But I've always seen, like, some technical problems from him. Like, because, like, this division, as far as the welterweight is concerned, I'm watching everybody. I'm looking at everybody's little technical problems, everybody's skills, everybody's strengths, weaknesses. I'm gauging everybody because everybody's a target for me. Everybody. Earl Spence, Terrence Crawford, Keith Thurman, all of them. All of them is a target for me. Sooner or later, I might be fighting one of them. So when it comes to Keith Thurman, yeah, the ring rush was it definitely showed. And also it looks like he can't really get away from a straight punch. You know, he has a hard time throwing straight punches because all his power he loads up with these hooks. And it seems like when the going gets tough, he can't get away from those just basic straight punches. Because he got caught a few times with the right hand. And I'm just sitting there like, man, he can't get away from that. He can't move his head or nothing. No, his only retreat was to move his feet. And when his feet weren't as fast, it kind of showed. It kind of showed a little bit. And he's still a great fighter, though. Still great.
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of those guys. I was a big believer in him. I respect him a lot for obviously fighting Garcia and Porter back to back, beating them both. So for me, he's probably got the best. The best wins of recent times over true welterweights. So I do have to throw a bit of respect on his name. The inactivity, a lot of people were kind of fed up with that. He come back, he didn't look great, but look, if he wants to be active again, I'm sure we'd all love to see that. The other man you mentioned, Terrence Crawford, another guy that's looked at as possibly the best at 147. He takes on Amir Khan on April 20th. At first, I thought it was pretty much a mismatch and that Khan would get destroyed. But I must say, as the fight's edging closer, I think Khan's got a real chance. I don't think Crawford carries that dynamite in his fists. But then again, I also know you don't really need dynamite to put Khan on the canvas.
Yeah, I think that fight is going to be very interesting. It's going to be very interesting. I've watched these guys very closely. Like for instance, I know the weaknesses of both of them, and we can start by the Superman of the division, which is Terrence Crawford, right? Terrence Crawford has a hard time with talented fighters. Period. He has a hard time with talented fighters that have way more talent than he does. Like, Terrence Crawford is not really talented, like true talent. What he has is like that hard work and discipline. He has all these techniques. It's the reason why he's able to switch stance and do this and do that. And he does so many adjustments and makes so many adjustments in the ring. And the reason why is because he has to bridge that gap of talent. And most times, like especially in the amateurs, it doesn't always pan out. But now, as a pro, he's made a way to make it work for him. So like, with that being said, guess who he's about to fight? A highly talented fighter, which is Amir Khan. So like, that fight is very interesting because Amir Khan really does have a shot to beat Terrence Crawford if he has the ability to control his mental stamina and his abilities. Like for instance, the fight with Gamboa. Gamboa came off very easy. It made it look like it was going to be an easy fight. And the only reason why Gamboa lost is because Gamboa wasn't able to make adjustments and wasn't able to stay mentally stable. That's where like the fighters that are like highly talented, even people like myself, highly talented fighters, their biggest flaw most times is the fact that they beat themselves because they don't have the mental stamina and the mental stability to withstand diversity, because they're always the diversity. They're always They're always the one that everybody has to try to adapt to. You get what I'm saying? It's kind of like the Pacquiao versus Marquez. Pacquiao never changes. He never changes throughout all of those fights. But guess who did change? Marquez. Marquez kept changing over and over and over again. As long as he can keep getting up from those knockdowns and screwing his nose in, buttoning his ears back in, He literally, like, you'll knock him dead, and then he'll literally come back to life. And as long as he kept getting up and kept fighting and kept fighting and kept fighting, eventually he was going to get Pacquiao, because he's the only one that's making the adjustment. The talented fighter like Pacquiao did not have to make adjustments because everybody has to adjust to what he's doing. So in the end, like the talented fighter, that's like their biggest kink, their biggest flaw is learning how to make adjustments when those trials of diversity starts to come up. But now we gotta think about the flaws of Amir Khan. The chin, of course, is going to be one of them. But his biggest flaw is that he uses his feet far too much. That he does, like, there's other things and there's other like technical things that play a difference too. He doesn't move his head. He moves his feet, but he can't move his head. He doesn't have any head movement. So all of his defense has to be based around his foot movement and trying to catch, if he can catch it with it. So basically he has to see it. He doesn't have any like basic conventional head movement, which can be a problem if Terrence Crawford can trick his eyes just for a second, because that's all it really took. It's just a second, and then boom, these guys usually catch him.
I got to say, Blair, man, you sound so much like an old head on young shoulders. You just hearing you talk about some of this stuff. It's like I'd think I'm speaking to a 60-year-old guy that's trained like 20 world champions. It's a good thing. Let me ask, Blair. When are you next out? Have you got any idea just yet when your next fight will be?
Well, I'm trying to get back in there as soon as possible. I'm still healing up from the last fight. Not that much, just a little bit of eye damage. So we're in the eye is almost completely healed already. So I should be back in on May 4th. We're trying to get on the undercard of the Canelo Alvarez fight and Danny Jacobs.
Wow.
I'm very excited to be a part of that fight.
Wow. And
it's very exciting to even see that fight come to fruition. That's been a fight that I've always wanted to see. I look up to Danny Jacobs. Danny Jacobs is a fine fighter. Is a very, very fine fighter, and a fine man. Period. He's incredible. They call him the Magic Man. Like he's a miracle. He's a miracle man. Really, he fought cancer. Like how many boxers can ever say that? It's incredible. And then we have, of course, Canelo Alvarez. I've known Canelo far before the world even knew him. I started boxing in Guadalajara, Mexico. I knew his training camp. I knew his training partners and his trainer, Eddie Reynoso. I known him long before like they even made it famous. So it's very interesting to see this young man rise in the division to become like the next big thing, and it's awesome. It's awesome to see that fight come to fruition.
No, I mean it's brilliant. If you end up on that undercard, that'd be unbelievable for you, Blair. Obviously, you're still connected with Golden Boy and Matchroom have come together with the DAZN platform. That kind of opens up all these other options now for any of Eddie Hearn's welterweights. You could quite easily be involved in a fight with any of those. Have you literally got anyone at the minute on your radar in a realistic world? Have you got any names you can throw out that you'd like to fight in the very near future, perhaps for the undercard?
Not really. And then the ones I do, I kind of gotta keep to myself.
That's fine.
I can't catch people off guard if I'm calling them out, right? But not really. Right now, it's just about trying to gain the experience. See, through this fight that I just recently fought, I haven't even been able to put out my best performance. I haven't even been able to put out what I've been able to do in the ring. I mean, in the gym. So everything has not completely converted to the actual fight because it's still a process of gaining the experience and gaining the experience in the ring, gaining the experience of taking everything from preparation to the final product, which is the fight. So it's a process. It's a process of getting all of that together, and then also still being a showman, still having because boxing is still entertainment. So I still have to also keep in mind that I have to make it entertaining while I'm kicking this ass. So it's a process that I'm still going through, and it doesn't really matter who I fight, as long as they have a good record or whatever. I'm willing to fight whoever, you know. Hey man, I could be in a world title fight tomorrow, and like you're not going to see the same Blair Cobbs that was in the last fight. So it's an interesting road that I'm willing to take.
Yeah, and I cannot wait to see the next few steps of it, Blair. Just before we let you go, have you got any closing messages, any closing words just for the listeners, just before we let you go, Blair?
Yeah, just look out for me. My name is Blair The Flair. Look out for me, and you can check me out on Instagram, Blair.Cobbs on Instagram, Blair Cobbs on Facebook. Woo! I'm back, baby, and better than ever.
Listen, Blair, I'd like to just thank you once again for coming on this week's show. It's great catching up whenever we do. Congrats once again on the win. I really hope you get on that May 4th undercard, and we'll speak again soon.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, and this wraps up episode 180 of the BoxHard Podcast. I've been your host, Joey Coastman. Ayaz Sumra has been Ayaz Sumra. A massive thank you to our two guests on this week's show, the undefeated welterweight prospect Blair Cobbs, Blair The Flair, and the former US Marine turned world title challenger. He really has had a fantastic story, and hopefully there'll be many more exciting chapters. Mr. Jamel Herring. The prediction league currently stands at myself in the lead on 96 points. I'm almost there. Ayaz is in second place on 90 points, and you, the listeners, are at the back on 89. But there is another 6 points up for grabs this weekend. It's a big weekend. It really is. I have actually got the chance here to win the title and get 100 predictions right, which is crazy to think. I was at the back, trailing by a few points at one stage, and now I'm running away with it. I'm absolutely loving life with the predictions. I don't want to tempt fate though, so I'm gonna keep my fingers and toes crossed. But that is about everything though, guys. Thank you so much for listening to this week's podcast, and we'll see you all again next week.